Okay, so we are going to talk about doula backups. Hey everybody, welcome to the second doula business chat. Thanks so much for showing up. I'm really excited about doing this again. It's something new, and there might be a little technical glitch here and there, but we're going to try to do our best and talk about topics that are important for doulas. Now, just a quick introduction. I don't want to take a lot of time, but my name is Alice Turner. I am the owner of Your Doula Bag, and been a doula for 10 years. It will be in March, coming up in 2015. I'm also a Lamaze childbirth educator, and totally love the work as a doula, and I also really love working with other doulas with the selling tools with Your Doula Bag and services, and just connecting. Doing the chat was something that I really wanted to do really after visiting the Lamaze Dona conference this year and not having enough time to just talk to doulas. So that's sort of how this got started. And real quickly, just a plan for the chat. We'll meet participants, which is Jessica. We can see her down in the in our little film strip down there. I'm going to do about 15 minutes or so of content, and also be kind of switching between the chat box, looking for questions, and definitely want to hear from Jessica and if anyone else joins the chat. Then we'll do a little bit more discussion, and then kind of a wrap up with some next steps. If you follow me on any social media, you can probably tell I love it. And a hashtag for our chats is doula biz, B-I-Z, chat. And after our last chat, I had so much fun seeing pictures and Instagram chat, and on Twitter, and I would love to see that again if you can. That would be great. And I'm going to try to remember myself to take a couple pics during the chat, just so that we can remember it and get more doulas excited about it too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pop over to you, Jessica, so you can introduce yourself.
Okay, hi. So I didn't get to do the last chat because I was sick. I'm feeling much better, but my throat is still a little sore, so please excuse me. I am Jessica Pope. I live in Normal, Illinois, and I've been a doula for 8 years. I have 3 kids, and I'm a childbirth educator, and I sometimes do work I train doulas, and I work as a midwife assistant sometimes, so having a good backup is very important. Yeah, I think that's it. That's me.
Love it. That sounds great. And Jessica, I think you were one of our Instagram that you took a picture, didn't you?
Yeah, so
from last time.
Sick and bed.
That was awesome. Great. Okay, so doula backups is kind of, I think, a topic that maybe isn't the most exciting as a doula, but it's absolutely essential. And sometimes it's a stumbling block. I've heard new doulas say, I want to get started, but I don't have a backup, which I think is a really valid concern and kind of a hurdle that a lot of us have to get through when we start out as a new doula. Even if you're only doing 1 birth a month, I think it's still crucial to have a backup. Now, we all know births don't necessarily come on their estimated due date, right? And my first backup situation actually happened when I had 2 clients that were 30 days apart, due 30 days apart. And of course I thought, oh, I'm in the clear. But I did have a backup secured. I actually had a client who requested that I use their childbirth educator as the backup, which sounded great. She was also a doula. We hadn't met in person before, but I had heard her name out there in the community. And so I contacted her on the phone, and we had a conversation. I said, that my client would like to use her as a backup. Is she up for that? She was totally on board. And so she agreed to back up either of those two clients that were close to each other. I checked in with her again. I was probably like a week out or two from the due date, just, hey, making sure you're still available. She said yes. So all was great, as what I thought was great. And sure enough, have one client go into labor. It was about 4 a.m. I reached her house and my phone rang. And of course, what am I thinking? Insert, your choice of 4-letter words. And I look at it, and who is it? But it's my other client who water broke. So of course, she's needed. She needs someone as well. So it's my first time. But okay, well, I knew it was going to happen sometime. I'm going to have to call in a backup. And I remember I excused myself from my client. I said, I have someone else in labor. I'm going to go out on your front porch and call in my backup for that client. So I called the backup. Granted, it was 4 a.m., so I woke her up. And I said, hey, so sorry, but I've got 2 people in labor, and your students are in need of a backup. It was actually her students. And she said, sorry, can't go. And I said, what? I was shocked. And so she said that she was sick. She had had the flu. Her kids had the flu. She was kind of hemming and hawing about what the situation was. And then she said, and I also have someone else who might be in labor, or they're going to be in labor any day, and I can't be your backup right now. So after my panic kind of settled me down for a couple minutes, I was panicked. And I was really mad, actually, as well, because I didn't know what to do. She was my backup, and I knew my clients needed support. So that's when I started dialing other doulas that I knew at 4 a.m., knowing that they were not on call for me, probably asleep, might not even be on call for anyone, might not have their phones. The first doula, I woke up, she couldn't do it. The second doula didn't answer the phone, I left a message. That's when I started thinking, I don't even have a lot of other options in my phone. What am I going to do? And then the second doula called me back. She now has the nickname Angel Doula because she stepped in and was not on call, doesn't take many births, but said that she would do it and help me out. And, it was a complete panic situation that really shouldn't have happened. So that was my first experience with a doula backup and needing a doula backup. Since then, I have called in a backup several times for different situations, mostly 2 clients in labor at the same time. And just this year, actually, I was the backup for 5 different births. So I had 2 doulas that I back up, and I ended up attending 5 births as a backup. So needing a backup is super important. Now, especially when you're a new doula, I think the question is, how am I going to find a backup? And, using a childbirth educator of your clients who might also be a doula, I think is a great way to go, even though obviously my first story wasn't a good example of that. But I think that that's a nice place to start. Sometimes I have asked my clients when I was a newer doula if they interviewed someone that they really liked, or if they knew of another doula that maybe one of their friends used, or if they had someone in mind, just so that if they did have someone in mind, maybe that was someone that I should start with. And that might also be a task, something that you don't want to ask, that maybe you have your preferred doulas that you back up with, and you don't really want to open up that box of choice for them, which is okay too, I think. There are many things I think that you need to consider when looking for a backup. And probably, I would say number one would be their skills, experience, training, certification. Sort of all of those wrapped up into one. Personally, I like to find someone who kind of matches what I bring to the table. If possible, it's nice to say to clients, I have this doula that's going to back me up, and she has similar experiences, skills, training, certification, that kind of thing. Especially if that is what maybe attracted your clients to you in the first place. If they were looking for, a doula with a certain certification, or someone who had this many number of births or this much time of experience. Sometimes that is kind of a first, I think, go-to maybe when you're looking for a doula. Other things that might be just as important to you are things like style. So, we all sort of have our own style and our own ways of practicing. I would say something that's really important to me is I really value teamwork. Someone who works very well with other care providers and nurses and really makes it a team sort of environment. And so that's really important to me when I'm looking for a backup. So that's, I think maybe just as important as the experience and everything I talked about before. Other things to consider is your representation of your brand, right? If you end up sending someone in for you, they are representing you. So you really want to take that into consideration that, is this someone who you can trust to represent your brand, your style, represent you? Will they take care of your clients in the same way or up to your standards? And reliability is another good one, which is something that was my sticking point in my doula story. I did not realize that reliability wasn't going to be an issue, and yet I really didn't do my research and probably could have figured that out if I would have asked the right questions of this doula. Frankly, I was just so excited she said yes, and I thought, okay, boom, done. So we have someone else joining the call. I'm just going to pause real quick. Hey, Alexandria.
Hi.
Thanks for joining the call.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that. I woke up late.
Well, sleep is important. I'm going to pop over to you real quick and let you say hello real quick. Okay. Oh, it looks like you might have a visitor too.
Okay, hold on. I can't really hear you that well. Give me just a second.
Okay, I'll give you a second. Looks like we've got a doula in training too with her. So reliability is super important in finding your backup doula. The other thing to think about is, their personality. Is the personality going to be a good match for your client? Are they the type of personality that can just step into a situation and be fine to just roll with the punches and, go and just be ready? Because, when you are a doula, it is very much stepping in and just having to quickly learn, quickly see what's going on, meet people, what is their birth plan. If you aren't given a lot of information beforehand, then you can, it's going to be a quick situation. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause and let Alexandria say hello, and then maybe we can have a little chat about what kind of qualities, I listed a bunch of qualities that I think is important to consider for finding a backup, but I'd love to hear from both the chat room and from Alexandria and Jessica what they are thinking about qualities that they look for in a doula. Okay, so Alexandria, I'm going to put the camera on you. And let me make sure you're not muted. Hold on for 1 second. Okay. I think you are good to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexandria. I've been a doula since June, and I absolutely love it. I'm a mom of two, which makes me want to be a doula because I had two doulas there. And for me, I think that with finding the perfect backup, like Alice was saying, is reliability, because you never know what the situation is what's going to happen. You might have a mom who has a quick labor history, but you're out and about, and then you need that backup, so just in case. Um, so yeah, that's to me, that's one of the greatest qualities of finding a backup is reliability, and then also someone who your client feels comfortable with as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Awesome. Well, welcome to the chat. Okay, I'm gonna Jessica, I'm switching to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so the best thing I did for myself and my business was finding an amazing backup doula. About, I want to say a year and a half to 2 years into my business, when I'm locked and I look awesome. Okay. I met, actually it was a person who was looking to do birth photography, and she came and photographed my birth for my youngest son, and she and I got to talking, and she was just starting off as a doula, and so I bartered with her, and I got my CD with all my photos, and I did some mentoring with her, and so I kind of joke around that one great way to get a good backup is to make one. So
Awesome.
to kind of invest in another doula and help, learn together, and then you will have similar styles and similar ways of doing things. So yeah, Mallory was my main backup, but she lives about 45 minutes away from me, and we would back up for one another, but we always had to explain that we had this additional travel time. So ever since her and I started working together, we've been kind of mentoring and reaching out to other doulas, and we now have it's an association. We all work independently, but we associate with one another. So we all set our own prices, we set our own contracts. We're independent practice, but there's 9 of us all throughout Central Illinois, and we back up for one another. And we also offer professional support and like development opportunities to one another, and kind of a sounding board to talk through things together. But I just let my clients know, like, here are the doulas that back up for me. Now I mostly draw from the ones who live here in Bloomington Normal, so that way Mallory doesn't have to drive 45 minutes. And she has a couple doulas in Peoria that she usually draws from instead of me having to go. But it's nice to have more than one choice, because then if Mallory's sick, or if someone else is out of birth, or what's really hard is when they were just at like a really long birth and they're not going to go to my birth now. We have more than one person. So it's been really, really great for us. One thing that's been a little hard is figuring out all the details. When we first started, it was if somebody went to one of our births, we pay them half of our fee. And that's fine, except for now we have a range of what we charge. And then also we've run into the problem, for example, I was at a birth for about 30 hours, and I had to call in a backup, and then that backup was at the birth for another 12. So then, I paid them half my fee and basically didn't make any money.
Yeah.
There's things like that too. It's hard. But
awesome. Well, I love your idea of building your own backup, growing your own backup. I think that's a great strategy with a newer doula or someone just really interested in coming along or learning your style. I think that is a great way to really see people in action as well. So I guess, if you are going to do that, just make sure that your client knows maybe that 2 people are coming along, and you're teaching your backup, mentoring your backup. All of this is just a lot of just letting the client know, right? Like Jessica had mentioned that her backup lived kind of further away, and so it might take the backup a little bit longer to get to them. So I think just setting those expectations are really important, and letting them know that I have a backup, and sometimes I have to call her, and I think that it's important to not downplay the chance that a backup might be needed. And I know that I have done this in the past. When I was a newer doula, I remember saying something like, "Oh, I never really have to call a backup because people just really aren't in labor that much on the same day."
Mm-hmm.
And then if that happens, well, I just set them up to think that it's not going to happen, right? By saying that.
Right.
So, I think it's probably better to say it's not often, but it definitely happens. And so I just want to make sure that you're aware that that could happen, even if I schedule people far out, or even if you're due on the same day.
Right.
It might happen, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, setting the expectations way ahead of time of, this is who I have as my backup. This is how long it could take to get to you. And I find it important to let people know, like, I cover everything with the backup. You don't pay the backup. I pay the backup. That's part of my services that I offer, is that I have a backup. And I don't know how you do it with postpartum visits, but if a backup attends the birth, then both I and the doula that attended it go to the postpartum visit. So just letting them know how it would work if somebody came.
I love that. I was actually going to cover that. So love it. We're thinking on the same line. Yeah, I think it is important to talk about, if you go into labor, you always call me. I think most people do that. Some doulas like to give their clients the phone number of their backup just as a sort of safety net. If, for some reason there was a time that they couldn't get in touch with you, that depends on how you want to practice. If that's something comfortable for you or not, and comfortable for your backup. I think clients definitely should know, like Jessica said, that the payment for the backup will be handled by you, so they don't feel like, oh, this new doula came to my birth and I don't have a check with me. That's the last thing we want them to think about, is having to pay somebody on the spot. And then the postpartum visit, yeah, I love that idea of primary doula and client. I've done in my own practice both ways. Either I'll go to the postpartum because I'm really the main if I backed someone else up, then the doula that attends the birth would go, and then sometimes the other doula will visit together or separately. I think it depends on what choices you want to make and maybe how the birth went. But it's definitely something to probably get ironed out maybe beforehand with your backup, so that they know what's expected of them. So let me just pop over to chat, see if there's any questions about finding a backup. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about payment of the backup. I know Jessica brought that up a little bit and how it's complicated. I think it is complicated. So there are so many ways that you can work that backup arrangement. I think the majority of doulas probably do a portion of their fee goes to the backup. I know that's how I personally do it. And sometimes that ranges from half, or maybe a little bit more than half. Kind of depends on what your fee is. Sometimes I've seen people do an hourly rate, like a couple hours, a dollar amount per hour, and then it tops out at a certain number of hours or number of dollars.
Mm.
I've also heard of other arrangements where there's some doulas that only do backup. So they are backup doulas, and they actually are charging a fee just to be the backup, which I think is an interesting business model. You know, when we are backup, I mean, when we agree to back someone up, we are on call for them, right? So we have to be available. And being on call, as everyone who is a doula or on call knows, that that's super hard, right? Being on call is a hard thing to be. And if you're on call for a backup and then you never go in, you know, if you're never needed, well, you did spend the last week or a couple of weeks being on call. So, you know, that I think there's something to that. Maybe, especially if you're not reciprocating, if you are not backing up your backup, where you're both kind of living life on call for each other, right? If you are always backing up someone and they are never going to be your backup, well, you know, it's just something to think about. So I have heard of people being like a flat fee, like a $50 for being on call, whether or not we use you or not. I've also heard of people bartering, like babysitting for backup services. So especially if you're newer, starting out, or trying to have a hard time finding childcare, and obviously, you know, have a good working relationship with another doula, maybe that's something that you can do. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it, but getting the money part figured out first is, I think, something that is super important. And then the other thing about money, which is kind of something that Jessica brought up, has to do with those long births, right? Say, you know, you have a backup and she covers for your client and it turns out to be a 36-hour birth. And maybe your fee was, you agreed to pay half. Well, I would say that maybe now's a good time to tip your backup, right? If she just spent a day and a half for you, maybe it have to increase the fee or give a little bit extra, or maybe throw in a Starbucks card or something like that. Now, the situation that Jessica described is just a super rough situation, right? 30 hours. It's like salt in your wound.
Well, and you pay for the sitter for your kids for 2 days. You know.
Oh, yeah.
So you're paying for the babysitter, you're paying for food at the hospital, and then you realize, I just can't stay awake anymore. Like, I just can't do this. I'm going to have to call backup in. And part of you, like, you don't want to leave because it's your client and you want to see it through. But then also part of you is thinking, and now I'm going to have to pay half my fee to have someone come. But
yes.
Thankfully, they're not all like that, I guess.
Well, you know, it's something, I think that situations like that are so real, and no matter, you know, for as long as if you do it long enough, you will encounter that situation. And it is rough because not only are you tired, but you know, when you're sleep deprived, you're also not thinking super clearly. So you're just, you know, sitting there trying to be present, but you're half asleep, and you're trying to figure out, you know, calling somebody in, and then it's our job, right? And we have to support our family. So we have to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wish that there was some kind of secret that I knew, or if anyone in the chat knows how to fix or prevent that situation. Is hard. Now, I have heard of and do know doulas in their contract that charge extra for going over a certain number of hours. And I think that in itself would be a great topic for a doula chat about, you know, just payment and going over and those super long marathon births and that kind of thing. Would be a great chat topic. But yeah, but I think it's hard to figure out payment in that situation. And probably I think I mean, not probably, but I think you did the right thing in calling someone in and having to pay them because they did have to spend their time, right?
Absolutely. And it was so, I mean, it was definitely worth it to pay for them and for them to, like you said, have a clear mind. I remember doing hip squeezes and thinking I'm going to fall asleep while doing. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
I can't do this. I'm falling asleep with my hand doing counter pressure. And this
right.
mom needed somebody. It wasn't like, well, you shouldn't have been there so early. Because there are times where it's like, well, you probably can shorten those births because maybe they weren't really in active labor. This mom needed somebody the whole time. Um, but when you sit there, it's like, okay, let me not figure out what I just made at this birth because it would depress me. So I do think
Yeah,
it's helpful. It's helpful for me instead of looking what I made per birth to look at, well, what did I make this month? Or what did I make in 6 months? Or what did I make in a year? And that usually gives me a better picture. Um, because if I'm looking at just that birth, then I'm probably quitting.
yeah, yes, yes. I don't know about you, but and you guys out there have had those, middle of the night thoughts of what am I doing in this job? Like this, this is really tough.
It is.
And then, of course, reality sets in, and you realize that it's the best job ever,
You realize you love it. Yep.
and you love it, and you love it. But it's a different job for sure, and times like that make it
Yep.
a little bit.
When your backups feel valued, like they know that you value them and they know that you're going to take care of them. I find it. I mean, I don't worry about finding a backup. I know that I have women who I can call and they will be there and they know that I will pay them fairly. And that's even though in that birth, that specific birth, it really hurt to do it. In the long run too, it's good for my business. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, well, I'm going to cover a couple other things, and then we have some awesome questions in the chat box. And if you guys are in the chat or watching and you haven't logged into the chat yet, please leave a question so we can just cover any other thoughts about doula backups. Okay, so other thoughts about the backup, and actually, I wanted to just tell you a little story. It's not a great story, so it's more kind of a warning, and it has to do with one of the qualities to consider when looking for a backup. And we talked about reliability, but I also wanted to talk about trustworthiness as something that's super important. Do you trust your client's care to this backup? And it's a little bit related, my story, but it is a situation that I have knowledge of. So it's a true story where a doula was practicing pretty regularly, and she chose to give out a phone number of her backup doula to her clients. So we talked about that a little bit earlier, whether you tell your clients to call you, and if you're not available, then maybe they have a phone number of your backup. Now, I don't personally do that because my phone is attached to me at all times. So even if I am at a labor, I'm able to send a quick text back, call you right back, or 5 minutes, or something like that. But some people do that. In this situation, the doula had done that. Now the key piece was that the phone number to the doula that she gave was a doula who had no knowledge that she was the backup. So, phone call out of the blue. Hey, can't get in touch with my doula. You're my backup. I need you to come. Which is not a good situation, right? Someone totally blindsided and worried about being with a client but not able to, or maybe able to but confused, and just not a good situation. So two sort of stories that I'm sharing are negative backup scenarios that could happen. But like I said, I personally was a backup for 5 births this year and had absolutely awesome experiences. And agreeing to be somebody's backup can be really cool. I mean, especially if you're someone who enjoys sort of just being thrown in the situation, which I kind of like that. I I I love getting to know my clients, and I love developing that relationship. But there's something pretty awesome to be able to just walk in, say hello, and have that challenge of how can I help someone. Mm-hmm. And I think probably most of us are, as doulas, are good at that situation. But it's also so gratifying to be able to sort of make that happen. So if you have been asked to be someone's backup, but maybe you're a little bit hesitant, it can be a really cool situation. Okay, so I'm popping over to the chat, and I'm going to read a question from Kristen, and she says, what about the worst case scenario of being in an area with so few practicing doulas and being unable to find a backup? How can your inability to have a backup available be communicated to the client in a positive or professional manner rather than apologetically? That is an excellent question, and one that I've heard a lot. So I don't have that particular problem in that I'm in Atlanta, so we have a good amount of doulas. But I know that many people live in areas of the country or the world that do not have access to many doulas that can even serve as a backup. So I would say it's definitely not something to apologize for. You cannot turn people into doulas that are just, not interested in it. So you cannot feel bad that you don't have someone to back you up. And I think that maybe a way that I might suggest handling this is just to let them know that you have made efforts to find someone that's a quality backup. And let me just say that even if you have maybe a handful of doulas in your area that you could use as backup, they might not be someone that you choose to use as backup. If their quality isn't to your standards, then I think that is okay as long as you are telling your client full communication, full transparency. So if you say to them, here are my efforts that I've gone through. I've talked around to people in the birth community asking if they knew of any other doulas in the area. I went to the big certifying groups like Kappa and Dona and all the newer ones that are springing up and said, do you know anybody in my area that I'm missing that maybe we could work as backups? And you tell your client, I have done all of my research and I cannot find anyone, and therefore I schedule people this way, maybe a little bit further out or maybe super close together is another strategy for trying to not have people at the same time, and let them know that it is a possibility, and maybe you structure your contract a little bit differently so that if you aren't there, they will receive, part of your fee back. And as long as they know that up front, in 100% transparency, they can say yes or no to you, right? If they choose, well, that's not good enough, then they could go without a backup, or find or either choose to go with you without a backup or choose to do something else. So I hope that answers your question. Did you have anything to add to that, Jessica?
No, I think having a plan in place of what's the plan if I couldn't go. So how much money goes back? How do I keep anything? Do I get to them as soon as possible? Do I still offer the postpartum visit? And letting them know exactly what it would look like if you weren't able to attend. And being completely honest, like you said, I think that's always, that I have people ask me all the time, like, well, I have to, I'm breastfeeding, so I'm going to have to take breaks to pump. Okay, let them know ahead of time. Or, I have this going on, so there's a chance that Okay, that's fine. Let them know ahead of time. And when you let them know all that stuff and they say, okay, we know all this and we're still choosing to hire you, then you've done the best effort that you can do. And just like I said, know exactly what would happen money wise. Are you still going to do the postpartum visit? Will you come visit them at the hospital? Like, what's the plan?
Love that. Yeah, that's great to talk about the plan postpartum too. That's awesome. And you might even say, if I'm not able to attend your birth for some reason, I can help you out postpartum for a certain number of hours. If that's something you feel like you would like to add to your services or feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Another question in our chat room is a great one, and I had it on my notes, but I totally skipped it. So Jennifer, thank you. She says, do you have clients meet with the backup prior? So awesome question. And what I usually do is tell my clients that I have one or two backups that I work with, and if they would like to have a phone conversation with the backup and meet them either on the phone or like with a Google Hangout, that would be awesome. And if they would like to meet in person, that we could do that too. If usually my clients say, oh no, that's fine, I don't need to meet them, I trust you, it's not going to happen. And that's okay. If I give them the effort or make the effort to suggest that they talk over the phone, that's good. Now, some of them have already met with my backup because they interviewed both of us, which makes it super convenient. And often, if I'm the backup for someone, I've been their childbirth educator, which I already know them, which is super great too. I have had a doula tell me that she has clients that really want to meet the backup and asked if that's okay. And I have met with them, and I've also been paid for that. And I think that is a thing to do, to at least pay your backup for the time if they take time to meet your clients. So it's something to think about. But I think that a lot of times clients say, no, that's okay, we don't need to meet with them. Or, sure, I'll talk on the phone. Do you find that true, Jessica?
Yeah, so I pretty much do the same thing. The only if there's an increased chance that the backup would have to attend, let's say I'm gone for 4 or 5 days around their due date on vacation or something, I always explain that ahead of time before they hire me. And so then they might be more likely to want to meet my backup because there's a higher chance. And then usually what I do is I pay for gas and then I take them out I take my backup, we're friends. So I go and take them out to dinner and, dinner's on me and we get to hang out a little bit. So that's how we do it. And we just, kind of have fun for the night. So I say dinner.
I love that.
Wine or, we get a glass of wine and I will cover that. But mostly like you, my clients are fine not meeting my backup. I think that's part of when you do the work of finding somebody who's trustworthy, who you respect, who, yeah, I might be sad that I'm not there, but I'm not worried about my clients in any way. I know they're in really good hands. I think that comes across when you talk about your backup. And so I think that instills trust. Your clients will trust your judgment and trust this person. So.
Awesome.
I did want to say something real quickly about finding someone who's trustworthy. Not just with your clients, but you want somebody who's going to be honest with you, especially if you're doing something like splitting a fee. Are they going to be honest about what they charged? Are they going to take a client and they know that there's a really high chance they're not going to be there, but hey, they still get half their money for doing a couple prenatal visits? Make sure that it's not going to be someone who's going to take advantage of you. And so don't, if it seems a little shady or if it's not somebody you don't feel comfortable with, then you don't need to do it.
Love that. Yep. Super, super important. Something, this is our profession and we have to cover all of our bases. Okay, last question from the chat and then we'll wrap up. So we have a question from Paloma and she's talking about Someone has said that she wants to be a backup, but maybe she's looking for a little bit more just time and hand holding and that, which is super okay, right? We've all been there, trying to get information, trying to learn the area, trying to get our feet wet. And sometimes that is a great place to start as a new doula, to go to a more experienced doula and say, hey, I would love to be your backup. I'm available. Let me know. And sometimes that works really well. But I also think that it's okay if you are approached by a newer doula looking for some help and some mentoring, and maybe you don't have the bandwidth and the time in your life to be that person, that it's okay to be honest and say, I'm not the right fit. I would love to help you, and I want to be that person, but I just can't be that person right now. And maybe you can give a suggestion, like, for someone else who might be looking to be a mentor. So I think it's hard. Well, let me just disclose that it's hard for me, I would say, to say no to things that I would really do. You know, we only, all of us are given the same amount of time, and it, to me, never seems like enough. And so it's okay that sometimes you have to just make some choices, and you know, maybe it's not right or you don't have the time right now, but maybe you have the time later. So I think that's okay too. Let me just check, see if there's anything else. Well, yeah, Jessica, let me know.
I charge for mentorship. I take usually just one or two people at a time, because that's all I can really do. But mentoring somebody takes a lot of work. It's harder to schedule if they're coming along with me. When that's more job shadowing than backing, but you know, it takes more work to schedule appointments, because now I need to see what works with 3 different people, not just 2. I invest time on talking about them, about what just happened and the birth and all that stuff. So I actually, you know, charge for that. And I don't charge a huge amount, but it's it's enough to kind of make me feel like it's worth the extra work that it takes to have a second person who's coming along and learning from you. But
that is awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think that is so absolutely true. And you know, if you are being mentored and are you know, paying your mentor, you know, I'd like to say that your mentor is really taking it seriously, right? If it is a job, we take it seriously. If it's like an extra side project that we try to do, it sometimes doesn't get done, right? But if we know that, okay, I've got my clients, I've got a new doula that I'm mentoring, well, we have to, you know, live up to that relationship, and we can't just, oh, that's right, I got to fit her in, because it's part of our responsibility in our work. And so, and it's something really to think about, and probably a great discussion for another chat. As we feel like we've gained enough experience, or we're ready to mentor other doulas, that is probably a really great added revenue stream into our business. And you know, it's beneficial for the doulas that are mentoring and the ones that are being mentored.
Yes.
And I definitely want to plan a discussion about some different revenue streams, and how we can make this profession a viable profession, and something that can sustain and we can make a living with. So I love that, and that might even be, maybe that needs to be our next topic, our next chat. So thanks so much to everyone. Just a couple little wrap up and some business items. If you would like to talk about the chat or post your Instagram pictures, I sure would love it. I took a couple while we were talking, and the hashtag is DoulaBizChat. Just like last week, I'm going to post the replay on my blog with notes. The notes that I took, I'll turn that into a blog, and anyone that missed it, or if you want to share it with any of your doula friends or your backups, who might want to look at it. The chat, it'll be there. And the other thing that's a little bit new in this chat is I have worked on creating a backup doula contract, and it is available for purchase. So if it's something that you would like to check out, there is a link on the page, and there'll be a link on my blog. Right now, it's $9. It's a fill-in-the-blank type of contract, and it's something that, you know, will help. The goal is to help that professional relationship get the details in writing so that we know the responsibilities of each party. And it could be something that either you are using, you can use for your backups, or you can bring to the table as a backup and say, I would like you to check out this contract, so that we have everything situated. So if you have questions about it, let me know. But it has been helpful in my business. So thank you especially to Jessica and Alexandria, who left. I know she had a little buddy with her. I have a feeling that might be why she left. But I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you guys in the chat room as well. If anyone has topics and ideas for another Google Hangout chat, please email me, alice@yourdoulabag.com. And I have really enjoyed connecting with doulas, and I hope that you guys enjoy it too. So thanks, Jessica, and thanks everybody out there.
Have a good day.
Have a great day. Get out there, and good luck with those births.